back to the In Out crowd, even though still staying in. Of course, we're still very much out. You caught me a little bit off guard there because I nearly spilled my juice all over the place. I was so excited. And that's not a euphemism. I really do have a wee cup of juice there that I nearly spilled because I was so happy to be back. And yes, thankfully, we are, even though we're still staying in, it is looking like we might be able to have perhaps a physical version of the In Out crowd at some point soon. I don't know how that would work. I don't know, but you know, I can always dream. And that is because we are, of course, we have been looking recently at the roadmap out of lockdown, I believe it's been called, which sounds a bit like one of Eurasia's lesser known kind of B-side albums, but even so, it is very good news, particularly because of all of our fabulous LGBTQ plus shows like Drag Race, and you know, there's so many. It's a Sin has recently been on, and it would be so great to be able to go to these viewing parties in one of our many fabulous venues, but unfortunately that hasn't been the case for the last year or so. But we understand that it has been necessary to be cancelling the prides and moving virtual for all of these kind of different prides and events. But even though the roadmap out of lockdown is being kind of posed by the government, both here in Scotland and also UK wide, there is still being some chat from various different LGBTQ plus pride events, such as this one here. This is what it would have looked like. I'm sure looking at this right now gives everyone a little bit of fear, because it does for me. I'm like, they are not 2 feet, 6 feet, however many feet apart. This was Bristol Pride in 2019. And Bristol Pride have said that they are actually going to be cancelling the physical Pride this year, not only for Bristol, but also for Leeds as well, and York and Hull. And there's many other cities that are following in those footsteps, even though by the time Pride season should be coming round, we should, in inverted commas, be back to our kind of semi-regular version of whatever the kind of eased off restrictions would be, but they have taken a decision to just cancel the physical sessions again, the physical events again, just because it is quote unquote too risky. And Leeds Pride organisers specifically said it would be quote unquote impossible to offer a completely COVID safe parade and free entertainment open to all on the 1st of August. So that's quite a kind of a little bit difficult for much of our community to be thinking about. Not because Pride's this pure lovely party, because of course it is, but obviously we know that there's a lot of people who, particularly for drag artists, musicians, DJs, club owners, pub owners, Pride season is quite often the main kind of, you know, it's like their Christmas almost. That's like their big version that's their big kind of event that will bring in a lot of income. And of course, our fabulous Thomas Small is also on the board of Dundee Pride. So I'd like to just invite my two fabulous co-star hosty people, Tommy and Eleanor, just have a wee chat about this. Eleanor having frequented many prides, a couple of prides, and Tommy being kind of the one of the men behind the magic. Just how do we sort of feel about this? Of course, it's difficult to think that we might not be getting another kind of pride as we know it, but how does that feel? I'll come to you first, Eleanor. What's your thoughts on the whole situation?
Yeah, I mean, you're probably closer when you say couple of prides. I think I've maybe been to about 4. A little baby gay over here. But everyone that I've been to, I've really, really enjoyed. So it's a difficult one, because if I was offered to go to one right now, I would not. I would rather take into consideration the safety aspects of it first. But yeah, I think what was important that I wanted to pick up on was that you said about Bristol Pride wanting to open to everyone. And we've talked before about like disabled access to LGBTQ plus events. And if people have got conditions that may stop them from going out because of COVID, or even the potential of COVID, that could be potentially excluding them from Pride, which we obviously want to avoid.
Yeah, you totally picked up. That's the exact thing that I was thinking as well. You know, there's been so much conversation, even out with our lovely rainbow community, about the kind of ageist, ableist kind of language that's being used around the whole of the she who shall not be named Miss Rona. And I think it's because, you know, when people are talking about it's only, right, this isn't what I think, this is just what certain people have been saying, it's only old people that get it, or it's only people with health conditions that get it, you know. So if you think, well, who would be generally on paper safe to go to a Pride this year, it would kind of, again, generally be the young people, people who can afford access to, you know, the health. There's somebody hoovering there. I got a fright. I thought it was from my end. But it's
No, it
good
did
to
sound like hoovering.
Yeah, the cleanliness is being maintained, whoever it was. So thank you very much. Could have even been from my end. Yes, so it would have been a Pride that is, you know, quote unquote, young people, healthy people, people with the money who can access that kind of healthcare. And that's not really what Pride is about, as you mentioned there, Eleanor. It's about open for all, and every single person should not only be able to go to a Pride, but feel safe to go. And whether that's, you know, financially, whether that's healthcare, anything, it's just not, it's one of those things, isn't it, kind of not for a certain amount of people but for everybody. Otherwise, yeah, that would be really exclusionary, I suppose. Thomas, being both kind of a frequenter of Pride but also organising it, you know, how does that kind of feel, having these conversations being had again for the second year running?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Because also I go to prides and various ones around the country. Like I lived in London for quite a long time, and the one in London it's kind of like morphed into like loads of different types of versions. There is like the Pride kind of march that usually has a thing kind of attached to it as well, like a party kind of vibe that goes on around central London too. But there's then usually also then this like pop-up thing that happens sometimes a few months in advance. And for the last few years, that entity's been called Mighty Hoopla, which is just amazing. It's like a big camp kind of explosion of prideness slash kind of stadium concert slash festival kind of. It's just a really amazing like vibe. Like it's just got a lovely kind of what's it called, atmosphere kind of about it, and it's just really joyful. And you know, I've been attending that for the last few years. So my friends have just told me that for my birthday this year that they've bought me tickets to go to it this year. So it's been moved. It's usually in June. It's usually like literally on my birthday, which is amazing. But this year it's been moved to September because of the current situation. So I mean, I feel a bit uneasy as well, because it's that thing about, you know, I've been locked in my house for a year because I've got like a long-term health condition. So it's kind of like, you know, yeah, that'll be, you know, coming out of lockdown or coming out of like being on your own for a whole year, and then suddenly you're like, what an explosion! Like, yeah. So I'm quite looking forward to that, but also really nervous about it as well. But I'm hoping that, you know, vaccines are going to do their job, and yeah, all of those things will hopefully change, and maybe we'll get some kind of autumn that's a bit more of a return to, you know, the best bits from before. Maybe, who knows? But if it doesn't, you know, I really firmly believe that this time next year, which we kind of said last year, but I feel like we're in a much better position now about vaccines and all of those kind of things then coming into play, that I'm hoping by next year we can be doing that. So as someone who organises the Pride, because yeah, as Alex said, I'm one of the co-chairs of Dundee Pride, and it is that thing about the level of planning to do one Pride is about a year in advance, if not sometimes 2 years in advance. So it isn't just a case of, you know, we'll decide that next week we could do a Pride. Obviously, it doesn't work like that. There's so much money that you have to gather, and so much support and form filling and safety checks that, you know, in a normal environment, that's already hard enough. Never mind then adding in a global pandemic into that mix, and all of the financial worries that go with that about, you know, sponsorship and funding and all of those things that actually make the event happen. So it's a super, super, super complicated effort. You know, it looks like just a party. Obviously, it's not. It's complicated, you know. When you see that picture, it's like it both fills me with pride, but also makes me think, oh my goodness, I know what it took for them to stay. That how complicated that is. So complicated. But yeah.
Completely. Well, yeah, thanks both of you for having a wee chat with us about there and hashtag talking that out, because it is an issue that it's always one of those things that it's not just, oh, so Pride is cancelled, or, you know, it's deeper than that, as you'd say, Tommy. It's people's livelihoods, it's sponsorships, it's, you know, as we'd mentioned, the drag artists, the DJs, like everyone in the sort of entertainment industry, particularly the LGBTQ plus live entertainment industry. This is like, you know, the golden season. So we totally hope that it's going to be back on track for next year. And as you'd mentioned, Tommy, the best bits from it that we can take forward. And hopefully, actually, if anything, this has shown us that from last year, and that with the virtual prize, and this year, some more virtual prides are going to be coming out, that it takes a lot more than just a virus. Sorry, I shouldn't say it like that, but more than a virus to kind of keep us down. And it's not going to, we can still have pride, and we can still have, you know, Zoom parties, and, you know, dress up in the rainbow flag in our living rooms if that's what it takes. And it just makes the next experience that we have all together, your mighty hoopla, Tommy, hopefully it'll make it even more mighty, with any luck. Well, as well as that, there's lots of other things that we do still have to talk about, as well as Pride, and as well as all of the lockdown restrictions, as well as everything else. So we're going to take a wee whistle stop to it in some of the recent news items that have came up from this week and last, because it's now time for the weather. Girl. It's raining men. Hallelujah. It's raining men. Amen. Yes, it's raining them, and we have got plenty of little news and weather reports to be bringing to you. First up, over the last couple of weeks, it has been sunny, glorious sunshine, because we have, of course, crowned a brand new next drag superstar from the UK, and it is none other than the flower of Scotland herself, Miss Lawrence Chaney, who is this one right here in the purple. We are so pleased that it's actually not only had one Scottish Queen win Drag Race UK Series 2, but we had two Scottish Queens in the top four. Of course, the fabulous, we have a shake here, Ellie Diamond, who is the Diamond Doll of Dundee herself. As we mentioned, we worked with Ellie on our Hear Me Out project, and she was so lovely, and it's just so great to see two fabulous queens representing not only Scottish drag, but Scotland as a whole. That has been just so great to see, particularly for young LGBTQ plus people in Scotland. It just reminds you that, you know, the sky is not even the limit. We can go even further. And of course, as well as the fabulous Scottish folks, we also really want to give a huge shout out to the other two Final Four as well. Miss Tace, who is right here, just totally kept us laughing the whole way, as well as delivering us some really fabulous looks. We are just really, Tace ended up being one of my favourites towards the end there. And of course, a special shout out to the non-binary bad one herself there, Miss Bimini Bon Boulash, who was one of the first openly kind of non-binary queens on the show, not only in the UK, but across the franchise. Of course, we had then recently found out that there were many other queens who were non-binary being on the show, such as Davina De Campo, who was in UK Series 1. There's also been many other winners of Drag Race who have been non-binary, as well as other contestants, including but not limited to Sasha Velour, Money Exchange, Bob the Drag Queen, and many more. But what makes Bimini so special is, of course, being from the UK and being vegan as well. That's just from me. But also being one of the first queens to have a talk with other contestants, Jenny Lemon, about being non-binary and being a non-binary drag artist as well. It was really inspiring for everybody, regardless of where they're from in the UK, and we can't wait to see what the rest of these four do. Thank you very much. Mwah! We rain down to you, queens. And as well as that, we also have to have a bit of balance here on our weather, girl. We've also got to have some gloomy skies as well. Now, we'd mentioned, of course, that Leeds Pride and Leeds Pride and York and Hull Pride have all confirmed that they will be postponing or moving to a virtual Pride this year. But that's not the only Pride news that we have been kind of shocked by recently. over the last couple of weeks, over the last 2 weeks, we have had some news that the entire Pride in London Advisory Board quit over, quote unquote, a hostile environment. So the 2019 Pride Parade, which you can see here in London, was attended by more than 1.5 million people. So it's a huge, huge, huge amount of people that London Pride gets, and it is one of the biggest, well, I'd say the biggest Pride in the UK, but it's one of the biggest Prides worldwide as well. All 10 members of the Pride in London Community Advisory Board, CAB, have resigned, citing a hostile environment, particularly for volunteers who were not white. Now, this is something that has been discussed a couple of times on the In Out Crowd, but I think it's also something that we're going to be chatting about later on in the show as well. Again, I'd like to just quickly bring back my fabulous co-folks there, who is Eleanor and Thomas, and it was just, again, to have like a wee kind of chat about this and just kind of showing that it's something that we are very aware of here at the In Out Crowd. And it's difficult because sometimes it's always upsetting to hear that anyone within our community is feeling sort of like bullying, harassment. Of course, this is not confirmed, and this is still under investigation, so everything that we're chatting about here is alleged. But even the alleged kind of things that we're hearing about there, it's quite difficult to hear that anyone in our community feels victimised by other people in our community. And certainly that's something that we totally stand by. Everybody who has been feeling this way, and we are really pleased to hear that hopefully there is going to be a kind of further investigation into this. But it just shows that sometimes, Pride, even though it looks gorgeous in that picture that I had there is of course a lot of things within our community that, we are still working towards. Even here in Scotland, we're all still trying to make it a better place for everyone. Eleanor, do you have any thoughts on that recent news segment there?
Yeah, I was thinking actually of a slightly different angle or aspect. One, again, that we discussed previously quite a long time ago on the In Out Crowd when we first started, was to do with bi-erasure. And I think Pride is a clear, can be a clear platform for seeing that, when bi people may come in a straight presenting relationship and therefore feel excluded in Pride. And I think that's something I've discussed with multiple friends before. And although I don't have a total answer, I'm not going to lie, it's important to know about. And also a slightly different thing, bringing back what you said about within the community, there could be potentially some rifts or whatever. Myself and my partner were joking about the fact that lesbian women are supposedly meant to hate gay men, and they will never be friends. Like, they're the opposite side of the spectrum. And I personally have never had any experience with that. And I think sometimes we over stereotype and over label, and we're all subject to adversity in this community, so let's all just come together.
That's it, and being understanding of other people's experiences and backgrounds may be completely different. You may take two people who are both gay men, for example, but one could be a black gay man from London and one could be an Asian gay man from Inverness. It doesn't mean they're going to have the exact same experiences. In fact, quite the opposite. Their experiences may very well be completely different, and important to listen to each other, and as you said, come together and just kind of support one another in that and kind of hold space for that. Tommy, any thoughts that you'd like to share with us on that?
Just that, from again, just working with Dundee Pride, like, there's you can almost make an assumption that people are going to be like-minded within the LGBTQ plus community, and like all communities, that's just not really the case. That you get along with some people, you don't get along with other people. You think that the thing that unites you is going to be the overriding kind of thing, but it's not often. Sometimes there's really quite heated debates about different thinking about inclusivity and accessibility. People, even within our LGBTQ plus community, people have got very different opinions on what that should look like. And I think that's demonstrated by you know, I mean, I think it's something that we've struggled with in Dundee, is about, you know, we're a relatively small town. You know, although we're the 4th largest city in Scotland, we're still a relatively small town, you know, and you think it's a struggle trying to find the kind of right people to that in our city that have similar points of view about inclusivity and about open access to all and about everyone having the right to be represented and all of those kind of things. You know, it's difficult and challenging to find like-minded people that can help steer that group. But so in some ways, when I read that about London Pride, I kind of thought, oh, okay, so it's that kind of conversation is happening everywhere, and it's challenging for everyone. So there was something about, obviously, you know, I mean, it's not a great situation that, you know, that the whole group felt that they needed to step back, but there was something there about just thinking about, oh, there's a long way to go, and you almost think that in the bigger cities that maybe they're a bit more sorted with those things, and then you realize actually they're not. So I think that's been the thing that's really kind of highlighted something for me, is about big cities maybe don't always have the answers, and are maybe no more sorted than some of the smaller prides and smaller LGBTQ plus communities. It's the same issues everywhere. So there's something then about that deep set kind of institutional racism or ableism, or, you know, whatever those kind of accessibility or inclusivity issues seem to be something that we really need to tackle just as a society. And maybe that's where dance and art comes in, and we, you know, because what the arts do really well is actually kind of hold a mirror up to society and kind of go, are we happy with that? You know, and does it in a way that actually allows people to find ways of being able to, you know, it's not a news report, it's not journalism, it's not batting someone down, or what's that thing? There was a new thing that people started saying this year about, people jumping on a bandwagon. Do you know that? Like signposting. It's that thing about signposting that I can't remember what people called that.
Couldn't tell you.
No.
I've heard of like stay in your lane type thing, like staying in your lane.
No, thing where people are like, basically, you know, someone says, I'm just going to pull a really crude example.
Is it gatekeeping?
No. Oh. It's like, I'm going to find it when we're chatting. I'm going to find it, and I'll come back to me later, and I'll find it. But it's that thing where you've got a cause, and it's kind of like, you know, I'm pushing this cause so much that in a way people can alienate everyone else because it feels like jumping on a bandwagon and not truthful. Whereas, you know, I think we're all good. We're all social media savvy nowadays, where we can kind of go, oh, someone's just jumping on a bandwagon, as opposed to actually going, no, this is actually genuine how I feel. I genuinely feel that change needs to happen. And I feel like arts do that really well, because it isn't just jumping on a bandwagon. It's about actually holding mirrors up to society to go, we could do better.
Yeah, I love how you phrased that, and certainly that is a really nice segue, Thomas. Well done for that segue into our kind of deeper look at these current affairs, or as we call them, our Raisin Liaisons, because we had the absolute pleasure of being joined by the incredible Rob from charity and community organisation Blackout UK. So unfortunately, Rob couldn't be here with us tonight. Completely understandable. You know, we're all night owls here, and not everybody is. But I had the pleasure of meeting with him a couple of weeks ago to chat a bit about Blackout UK and what their cause is. And the community space that they have created is to continue to create platforms, particularly for queer black men. So that includes gay black men, bi black men, pan, trans, anything that is under our fabulous rainbow umbrella. And some of the things that we've touched on tonight about the kind of deep-seated issues there that Tommy was talking about, they can affect everyone in very different ways depending on where you kind of fit in the LGBTQ plus umbrella. I'm using this little umbrella kind of image, and also where you're from geographically and what your ethnicity is and what your race is and what your religion is. All of these things Rob described really well as influencing our own kind of lived experience, and how he thinks it is really important to listen to each other's lived experience and help to uplift one another in creating these platforms. So I'll shut up now because Rob describes it far better than I do, and we're going to have a look at that, as I mentioned, on our Raisin Liaisons. Up on tonight's show, we are so grateful here at the In Out Crowd to be joined by the fabulous Rob from Blackout UK. Hello, Rob. How are you doing this evening?
Hey, really well. How are you?
Yes, not too bad, thanks. All the better for chatting to you tonight. I'm really, really pleased. So in case anyone up here is watching, because of course we are a Scottish charity, we're a Scottish show, and you folks aren't based in Scotland, so can you give just a brief introduction to who you are and what work you do with Blackout UK?
Right, so Blackout is a group of Black queer men who came together. Who we were concerned. We're looking around. We realised we were being services were offered to us, and very rarely we came together and created our own. So we became interested in how you create your own space and how you create a space that is really authentic for you, and you can invite other people to. So that's what we do. We create spaces digitally. We've got a mobile app. We create spaces, hopefully, when we get out of this pandemic together, to celebrate a Black queer experience.
I love that. Celebrate, absolutely. I think that's a word that unfortunately we, as a community as a whole, often don't get to celebrate. Sometimes we feel a bit ashamed to celebrate, but it's absolutely something to be celebrated. And how long has Blackout UK been running for? Are you a relatively new charity, or have you been around a long time?
Well, there's been a group of us working together for the last 4 or 5 years, but we're just now decided to become a registered charity and do this in a slightly different way in the future. But you know, we move at the speed of trust, right? Don't try and do too much and get ahead of yourself. So we're just taking it at the pace that's right for us.
I love that. Yeah, definitely. You got to move at a speed that's right for you. Obviously, the last year has been testing in all sorts of ways for lots of different reasons. In terms of for your charity, has there been any new or resurfacing kind of issues that has been presented over the events of the last year?
Well, in a couple of ways, it's been a really formative year, right? So we firstly we published our research, which gave us the first real evidence that we can use to influence policy about the challenges around mental health, the challenges around loneliness that Black queer men face, and the particular dynamics of that. We after the George Floyd murder in the States and the response about Black Lives Matter response here, we found that what was missing was a space for people to heal and deal with some of their trauma that they experienced. It's great being out there on the barricades and the front lines, but sometimes it takes a toll. So we created an online space for meditation and people just to breathe. I think which is the name of the site that we had. So yeah, it's been good because we got to know each other, and so there are 500 guys currently on our mobile app. We're about to spend the next few months really kind of focusing in on getting to know that 500 and building a real community amongst that group. And again, so we can invite other people to join in with that. So yeah, lots of changes, but we're building back better. I think the new extraordinary is what I keep on calling it, rather than the new normal.
Oh, I love that. The new extraordinary. What a way to phrase it.
It's got to be a better place to be, something more to look forward to than back to normal. Right?
Yeah, definitely. There's been a lot of chat about kind of going back to normal, and especially when you're talking there about mental health, there's been a lot of mental health specific charities that have said that, you know, the normal, the pre-pandemic wasn't exactly a mental health haven for anybody, and especially for queer people and especially for Black queer people. Is that something that you are also in agreement with, and again trying to build back into more extraordinary territory?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. But we've only got one direction we can go, which is forward, right? I mean, I think there's been all sorts of problems in the past, which we have to acknowledge, but we can't let hold us back. So we have to ask the questions about why there isn't a strategy to deal with mental health for Black queer people, given the particular impact of those intersections on our lives. Because it's inconvenient, because we're spread too broadly, because we don't have a neighborhoods. I mean, none of those are good enough arguments, really. And so it's good to be at a point where we can look around and see allies and others making those arguments alongside us. But ultimately, when we look around and say who's going to be there for us, it'd be nice if we could be there for each other.
Absolutely, totally, yeah, and I think especially for some people that might be watching this, and you know, apologies if this is an insensitive question, and feel free not to answer. I can edit it out. But sometimes people might say, well, what are the differences that Black queer people experience versus white queer people? And some people know the answer, and maybe some other people don't realise that there's very specific and very real differences in the experiences. Would you be comfortable to sort of answer in a personal point of view, or from your perspective as being part of Blackout?
Sure. So the factors that impact on people's lives when they're living under in a society in which is driven by racist thought, that can be a real pressure. In America, they think it takes about 7 years off the average life, just the stress of living in a society where, you know, when you go into public, you're worried potentially about the way in which you're perceived, and you're not in control of that. So the experience of being marginalized by race, alongside an experience of potentially losing community and losing that resilience against race by coming out, by acknowledging a minority sexuality or a gender identity. That kind of pressure combined is liable to lead to these patterns which we see of greater mental health support need. The ability to build kind of community resilience, so that we can look out for each other and spot we can spot when our peers are in need, I think is really sorely lacking. So how can we help ourselves? It's about self-care, but that part of that self-care is about how we care for the community around us.
Lovely. Thank you so much for answering that. I think that's a beautiful way of saying that as well, about self-care. It's not just about yourself, it's about the care of others. I think that is something that is, especially now, has always been important, but I think we're really seeing the importance of that. And in terms of
when self-care is, when people talk about self-care as if it's a bubble bath, it's got to be more than that, right?
Oh, for sure, yeah. A lush bath bomb can only take you so far. There's like societal patriarchal nonsense going on, then you know that's not going to be fixed with an incense and a glass of wine, unfortunately.
No, unfortunately. If it was any
if only the world would be so much simpler if that was the case. Of course, you'd also mentioned, as well as mental health, loneliness being a big impact on that as well. And I think that it's difficult to imagine that anyone could be lonely in the 21st century with all of the social medias that we have. But is that something that you are still seeing as being quite a big issue as well?
Yeah, completely. So we found that it was queer people of colour were more likely to be using the bars and the clubs that we haven't had for the last year. So people were needing to find spaces, and it was evident that they needed to find those spaces for a shared identity, but also just for a place where they can be accepted and let their hair down. Without those, we've seen people return to households which might not be as welcoming. We've seen people just lose that notion of connection, that hope, that potential to meet somebody. And our apps are horribly racialized and very difficult for lots of people as well. So yeah, so it's been I can see how there've been additional pressures. What I'm heartened by, though, are the willingness of people to engage online. There's been some amazing developments of online activity. So I'm kind of from Queer Bruck, who's been putting on these amazing nights, to Real Queers of London are doing some a lockdown liming where they'll kind of hang about together online. And similarly, we've been doing regular kind of chats, just discussions and debates. Hopefully that will continue. Hopefully we'll find connection there. But yeah, we're missing dancing. I miss the dance floor possibly the most.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I cannot wait until the first time I go back into one of those spaces and then I hear Shared Believe come on over the speakers. Oh, I'll be unstoppable. Are you finding, even though there is some really difficult issues going on always, but especially over the last year, there has been some kind of glimmers of hope in terms of here in Scotland. We have now added LGBTQ plus history and issues as part of our compulsory curriculum. Fingers crossed, England and the rest of the UK won't be too far behind. But how does it feel to be seeing these small changes become implemented slowly but surely?
I think the changes are too small. So I particularly look at things like curriculum. The resistance in England to changing the curriculum on the empire, on race and colonialism is matched really by the kind of resistance on sex and relationships education, including us. But there are battles to be fought still. But I do kind of, I have really appreciated the resilience of the community coming together. So it's been great to see us pivot away from being reliant on the alcohol-related bar, and finding new kind of spaces for us. I hope that we'll create some physical spaces too. So the thing I'm working on currently is the recreation of Pearl Alcock's Bar. So we're reopening in Brixton. Shortly after we can all do so safely, we'll be open as a pop-up for a couple of weeks. Because I think people forgot there was a black gay bar at the heart of black communities in South London in the 70s. We're bringing it back because it's about time. So, stuff to look forward to.
Oh, definitely. And I think, yeah, exactly what you're saying, that the changes are too small, and it's it definitely feels disheartening when there is, because even up here in Scotland, there is still a lot of resistance and a lot of petitions going around to take things off the curriculum and, keep things the way they are. And I think there is also, there's been some kind of whispers of potentially seeing something like Section 28 or something akin to that kind of creeping its way silently back in, because the pandemic seems to be sort of taking over the main news story of however long it will be lasting for, and of course rightly so, because there is so many issues. But it's definitely worrying that it could be other communities and other people's major issues that will be sidelined, and that is definitely something that's worrying for us. I don't know about kind of where you folks are.
Yeah, I think I think we're becoming less and less reliant on government, less and less dependent on the whim of local government as well. So recognizing that if we're going to make that change, we need to make change in our own lives and make change in the relationships that we foster. We can't depend on our leaders to understand us completely yet, but we need to understand each other. So I think that's I've definitely changed my perspective on where it's best to put the pressure, to put your effort, and spending time for me in rooms where people were questioning my right to exist gets tiresome. So you might as well spend time with other queer people. learning and building things with them. That feels like a good thing for the next period for me.
Totally agree with you. Yes, unfortunately, if only we could have, Dolly Parton as the as every in every branch of government across the world. But that's I don't think that's likely to happen.
Well, the movement starts here, right?
Absolutely, totally. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll see if I can get her on for a for a chat one day. But
We're questioning my right to exist. Gets tiresome. So you might as well spend time with other queer people, learning and building things with them. That feels like a good thing for the next period for me.
totally agree with you. Yes, unfortunately, if only we could have, Dolly Parton as the as every in every branch of government across the world. But that's I don't think that's likely to happen.
Well, the movement starts here, right?
Absolutely, totally. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll see if I can get her on for a for a chat one day. But I think that it's exactly what you're saying. That there is no there was a quote. Oh, I can't remember who said it, but it was if you think you're ever too small to make a change, you've obviously never been in bed with a mosquito. And there's something about that kind of quote. It's so true. And I'm hoping, and I'm sure that over the last year, even though there's been a lot of tumultuous things happening, that you've also experienced a lot of joy in the community sort of coming together in the way that you have.
Yeah, I hope so. And I know there's been a lot of that moving online of things like UK Black Pride and others. It felt kind of awkward and a bit difficult. But kind of midway through the celebrations of that and World Pride and we did a global Gay Men's Pride as well, global Black Gay Men's Pride, which we did this last summer too. It's been great to share with a broader range of people those moments. I still really miss the dance floor. But
Yes, it's just going to be dancing when you're doing the dishes and hoovering for the moment.
Absolutely. my poor neighbours.
I feel you. I'm on a top floor flat. There's like 3 floors beneath me, and all the here people lumping about when I'm trying to do the dishes. As well as kind of all of that, is there anything other than what you've said that's really given you hope moving forward over the next kind of year or two?
Yeah. So what's been really great is seeing organising amongst Black trans men, seeing organising from a new generation of kind of student-led activists. It's great because we need refreshing as a group of activists. We need refreshing, but also it's quite nice to follow new leaders as well as those who've been around for a bit longer. So yeah, no, I'm hopeful for the next bit, definitely.
Same here. Yeah, it's said that some of the young people that we've been working with recently, we did a kind of digital festival using queer stories and kind of interviews that we did with other LGBT people, and made kind of dance films out of them. And we were working with a high school in Dundee, Braveview Academy, and we kind of went in and just kind of to get their idea of kind of equality and what was important to them. So we were just asking kind of quite provocative questions. So, we said, stand up if you think that, gay rights matter, and everyone stood up. And we said, stand up if you believe trans rights matter, and everyone stood up. And then we said, okay, stand up if you believe Black Lives Matter, and everyone stood up. And then they all said why they believed in these statements. And I was like, these are kids, they're in their kind of mid-teens, but it was just so, it really reignited my faith in young people in humanity. It's like, no, it's going to be okay. These are the people that are coming up. Like it's going to be all right.
Completely, and it's a real lesson for those of us been in it a bit longer to learn how to follow. But I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the ride. So it's really good fun.
Oh, it's certainly right. It's a roller coaster, is how it feels sometimes, but it's going. As well, then, is there what if you had to kind of choose a few kind of goals or hopes and achievements for the community moving forward in the next, say, 5 to 10 years? Is there any kind of milestones that you would really like to see us reach?
So I'd really like to see, well, firstly, us start to value each other. So for Blackout, that means creating and valuing a space, a space that where we share our best. Right. So very often I see our groups of us who want the fame, the celebrity, and the platform, but those are famous celebrity and platforms in a that have an impact in the mainstream, but don't really have an impact for us. So I want to be able to give them the opportunity to be able to contribute back to us. So that I think means holding on some of these media platforms that we are creating and working across them to create a space that means more to us than a bit on the one show on that sofa. So I'd also like over the next period for us to start recording our culture better. This is a particular moment, and I think it will be really significant in terms of the next generation coming up, the legal barriers that have been overcome. The Drag Race starts with that kind of with the question, and what this I think is an and what moment for us. So we're asked to come forward with now that you're free, what is it you want it to be? I think is a really it's a really powerful question for me right now. It's one that's driving me and driving our work. What will you do with freedom when you have it?
I think that's gorgeous. Yeah, I think that's such a lovely way of kind of feeling going forward, and what would we like to see. And it kind of starts here, and it starts with kind of everybody, and there's not, the movements might only start with a few footsteps, but it's got to be kind of everybody behind it. And yeah, it's kind of all about, we always think, because our artistic director Tommy, he grew up all the way through Section 28, and he is kind of still absolutely maintaining, like, we don't want any young people that we work with or that watch the show or anything to feel the way that they were told that they were wrong, they were told they were other and they didn't belong. It's really something that we've personally seen as being almost like a kind of mental health crisis for a lot of queer people of that age, and it's still totally seeing the effects of that, and just making sure that is not happening again, but also taking care of the people that are still feeling those effects.
Sometimes I think it's much easier to motivate around a positive than it is about than being against a whole range of things. So I'd like to help articulate what that positive is. What is it that Black queer lives in Britain bring to society? What is it that our queer communities can emulate for the rest of society? Because really they've not been getting it right. So
completely. And up here in Scotland, I think that's something that I know, being from Glasgow, I certainly find it difficult to just not get raging at everything, like, oh my God, all this and that, but actually no, use the positive, like, put the energy into that. I think that's definitely something that we can all take on, finding the positive.
yeah, absolutely.
If there's any young people, or even kind of, any age, let's not just say young people, but LGBTQ plus people of any age kind of watching this, and particularly if there's any Black queer people watching this and really struggling with finding their confidence and feeling that they do matter and that they belong, is there any kind of little tips and tricks or word of advice that you would give someone watching who's kind of struggling with who they are just now?
I'd always say find your tribe. Right? So I'd always say that it's worth the search to find. When you say tribe, there might be thousands, but actually, you're lucky if you find 1 or 2 of them. We're just going to be with you throughout the journey, because there's an excitement in the journey and the change that may happen in the future. But it's most helpful to be able to check in with a couple of people along the way. So I wouldn't I? But I'd say join the app when that's available to everybody, to all Black queer men. It's the next stage of it will be to all allies as well. We don't want to build walls, but we don't have to. And I would say that finding connections that allow you to create something, to me always feels like a good use of time. Make something. I think that's always when in doubt, make something.
Yeah, even if it's just a cup of tea. Start with a cup of tea, then make a connection.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you so much for your time, Rob. I really, really appreciate you talking to us today, and it's a wonderful charity. He's doing such amazing work. You've mentioned the app. Is there anywhere else that people can find information on Blackout UK, like a website or social media or anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, so we're right across social medias. So blkoutuk.com, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, even the works. So look out for us.
Fabulous. Well, again, thank you so much, Rob. And everyone make sure to follow, support everything that Blackout UK are doing, and watch this space, because I think it's going to be ever growing.
Absolutely.
Oh, there we go. Sorry, I'm muting myself so that you wouldn't hear me breathing in the background. Yeah, thank you so much again, as I'd mentioned there, to Rob from Blackout UK. That was a really beautiful conversation. We really appreciate you giving up your time, Rob. If you're watching this, I have linked below all of the places where you can find Blackout UK's information on the app, their social medias, everything, and we can definitely be looking forward to the new Extraordinary, as Rob had said there. That was really, really beautiful. Of course, we mentioned a lot of hot topics in that conversation there with Rob, but there's even more hot topics that we're going to chat about just now with the fabulous Eleanor. So Eleanor, what is the hot topic all about this evening? Okay, so I think Eleanor maybe having some technical difficulties there with Eleanor. In the meantime, we will just go a little bit back to front. Me and Eleanor were kind of like chatting one day about all of the kind of different oh, we've just frozen, so we might still be coming. That's all right. Keep going. So yes, me and Eleanor are having a wee chat about all of the kind of like different things that we were kind of thinking about, what we've been chatting about with the in-out crowd. And the main thing is, for people that aren't within our community, they totally, they might accept us, but they might not always understand exactly where we're coming from. And that led us to having a wee think about what it was like to have a gal pal. Let's see if you can recognise anything that we're about to show you here.
Oh, look at them. Aren't they such nice wee gal pals?
Oh, Chin! Eleanor, come on! It's our song!
Oh, look. They even get a wee dance made up and everything. Oh, me and my best friend Mabel used to dance like that.
We've been together for 5 years. You know that, right?
Yeah, this is our engagement party. Oh, here, speaking of engagement, right, Ken, how wee Jimmy, you know how his daughter, right, you know, I like the one with the eye, well, he was saying, and she was coming over saying that it was hot and it was terrible, right, because she went and she bought something at the butcher's and then she didn't want it, she tried to tell it for the butcher's biscuit. And how's about that for a hot topic? Yeah, that was inspired by semi-true events after a conversation that me and Eleanor had. So if anyone recognises that themselves, then we see you, we hear you, and we understand. But that does, of course, bring us on to our caper conclusion here. Sorry, I had a wee itchy nose there. Woo! I'm just allergic to fabulousness. That's what happened there. Thank you again so much to both Eleanor and Tommy for joining me this evening. Apologies for any little technical difficulties that may have happened there. Again, I think the internet just couldn't quite handle all the fierceness, and so it was given up. Either that or I've no paid my bill again. Thank you again. Big, massive thank you to Rob from Blackout UK. As I've mentioned, you can follow all of their Instagrams and websites and all that kind of stuff down below. And let's definitely keep an eye out on the fabulous work that Blackout UK are doing as we move into the new Extraordinary. And of course, massive big thanks to the Corra Foundation for allowing the In-Out crowd to continue on into 2021. If you've been affected by anything that you've watched tonight and you want to get a little bit more support or a little bit of advice or anything, then of course you can also visit the Equality Network for help and support. And of course, for any young people watching, a really great place to go, the main place would be LGBT Youth Scotland. They have also got some fantastic resources, and Pink Saltire as well, and we will link some of them below. But for now, we will just leave you with everything that you have watched this evening, and we do hope that you enjoyed it. But for just now,